All right, we're back and we're looking at rhythm changes. So we're going to dig in just a little bit deeper and talk about the tritone substitution, and specifically the tritone substitution as it relates to the B section in rhythm changes. And the B section is built on a cycle of dominance. So here we are in the key of B flat. When we look at the cycle of dominance starting from the D, right? We take a little chunk of the cycle of fifths and we work our way down. So D7 resolves to G7, resolves to C7, resolves to F7, and then finally sort of does a more complete resolution to the key that we're in. So what I said at the top is tritone substitutions. So what we're going to look at is, we're going to take a look at a D7 chord. We're looking at the B section right now. This doesn't only apply to rhythm changes. This applies to absolutely every jazz tune you're ever going to play. This is classic chord substitution. If you understand tritone substitution, it's going to open up a huge number of possibilities with your chord progressions and your understanding of chords. And it's a simple thing, and I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. I'm going to try to keep it actually as guitaristic as possible. In other words, rather than, jabbering on about theory, I'm going to try to do this on the fretboard. So first of all, let's talk about a tritone. It is exactly what it says it is. It's two notes that are three tones apart, right? And so if we look at this D7 chord here, that tritone is found right here. And it is the seventh and the third of the chord. Right? And it really spells out. As a matter of fact, if I just put the bass note or root note of the chord under that tritone, we have a very full sounding seventh chord. I use that chord all the time. It's short and it's sweet and it's easy to play. We don't necessarily need that fifth at the top. It sort of, actually takes away from the interest of the chord for me. So that's nice. So all we've got there is just the root note and the tritone, right? Okay. So that tritone is what we want to look at. Take my word for it that these two notes are a tritone, three tones apart. Well, I could do it like this. Same thing, right? Just three notes, three tones apart. Okay. So now, check this out. This is a D7 chord, but what if is this tritone? Does it happen anywhere else? Well, yeah, look at that. That's interesting. That tritone is also in this form of the chord, it is also in an A flat 7 chord. So exactly the same tritone is in two different seventh chords. All right. And now if I go, let's say I play through the cycle a little bit. There's my G7 chord, and here's my tritone in that G7 chord. It's exactly the same shape. Let's put it that way. Okay, it might be easier for you to understand that way. It's exactly the same two notes. They happen to be inverted, but that doesn't matter for us right now. So check this out. If I go from the D7 to the G7, I've got the same tritone, and all I'm changing is the bass note. And now I move to the C7, same tritone, all I'm changing is the bass note. And then if I change the tritone again to the F7, all I'm changing is the bass note. So now, if I play these, these are great chord voicings, by the way. They work just fantastic. But that it's not only about the chord voicings, but if we just look at this from a chord voicing perspective, we take this tritone and we put a bass note below it, move it a semitone, put a different bass note below it, down a semitone, different bass note below it, down a semitone, different bass note below it. Okay? All right, but check this out. This is crazy. So if we've got that tritone and we just eliminate the bass notes, forget them, just play tritones. What we actually have then is a chromatic movement of these tritones. And then we finally resolve to the one chord of B flat. So just chromatic movement of those tritones is going to give you pretty much of that, just that double stop, that 2-note chord with no bass note. This will make the bass player happy, probably, right? Because the bass, you can maybe, hopefully depend on the bass player to be nailing the bass, the root notes of these chords. Okay, so now I thought, I think, just to clarify it a bit, I thought I'd maybe take a look at another tune. Now, this tune is in a different key. I'm not going to dig into this tune. It's still in a 32 measure form. But check out what happens in the B section in this tune here. I'm beginning to see the light. What happens in this section is we go from it's the same cycle except in a different key. Okay, same cycle except in a different key. But as you can see, what's happening here is they're doing exactly that what I just spoke about. Moving chromatically, but this time they're adding different chromatic bass notes. So so effectively, if I were to stay in this key, what we have is a movement that goes like this. Right? So it becomes, and there's lots of other examples of that kind of chromatic movement. Another example would be this tune called Well You Needn't by Thelonious Monk. As you can see, all of these changes are chromatic changes, and they can be they are a result of this tritone substitution idea. All he's doing here is playing with tritone substitutions. And again, chromatic, 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 chromatic. Listen to this section here from, I'll actually play it in this key, starting on the C7. So we've got this section here, it goes like this. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that one. So it's all tritone substitutions. So tritone substitution ends up putting our cycle of fifths changes into a chromatic passage. So rather than the bass movement going like this, right now all of a sudden we've got a bass note, a bass line that's going like this chromatically. So if I take that and insert that in for instance these rhythm changes here, what I end up with is a D7 to begin with, cool, and then rather than a G7, I end up with a D flat 7, and rather than and then the D flat 7 goes to the C7, and then rather than an F7, I go to a B7. In other words, it all becomes chromatic. Right? And it's all because this tritone, the tritone, is shared by two different seventh chords that happen to be a tritone apart as well, right? So that tritone is the essence of the sound of a dominant seventh chord. And because it's shared by two different dominant seventh chords, we can play with that idea. So rather than, let me sort of do this in context for you. I'll play the rhythm changes from the second A section. And then here comes the cycle. Chromatic. 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 Okay, so tritone substitution. What that means to you, playing other tunes, that aren't this rhythm change tunes, right? Let's do this. So if we have a 2 and a 5 and a 1 in the key of C major, right? 2, 5, 1. 5, and then 1. Now, the G7 has this tritone. There it is. And so does the D flat 7. Same tritone. So now I have a substitution based on the tritone for the G7 chord. Rather than play G7, I can play the D flat 7. The first progression is 2 to 5 to 1. Okay, the second progression with the tritone substitution becomes chromatic. D flat 7. Okay, I'll do that again. D flat 7 and the 1. The first one, it just the diatonic 7 chord. Tritone substitution. By the way, you're going to, I played this D flat 7 before. No different. The tritone just, same tritone, it just falls. It's just an inversion, right? Same notes of the chord, that's what matters. So now with tritone substitution, all of a sudden your bass lines that sounded like this now sound like this. Chromatic, right? Now I think that's just so cool. I hope this was a help to you, and I hope that I didn't completely confuse you. I know I can do that, but there's a ton of information there. Even though it's a fairly simple concept, just try to keep it simple. Experiment with it on the fretboard, and know that the tritone, which is the third and the seventh of a seventh chord, that tritone will also be the same tritone for a seventh chord a tritone away. G, tritone away, D flat 7, and giving us chromatic lines, chromatic resolutions, instead of these bass lines that jump all over the place, right? Okay, I think that's great. And if this was a help for you in any way, please let us know. And by clicking, down there, click like or subscribe. And if you've got questions, which after this lesson you probably will, let us know. And I'm serious. I'll get back to you. So thanks for dropping by. That was tritones, and most specifically in rhythm changes, but they can be used in absolutely any standard that you care to play. All right.